On the morning of the fourth day, his nostrils were suddenly surprised by a faint new scent. It was the scent of man, but yet a long way off. The ape-man thrilled with pleasure. Every sense was on the alert, as with crafty stealth he moved quickly through the trees, upwind in the direction of his prey. Presently he came upon it, a lone warrior treading softly through the jungle. Tarzan followed close above his quarry, waiting for a clearer space in which to hurl his rope. As he stalked the unconscious man, new thoughts presented themselves to the ape-man. Thoughts born of the refining influences of civilization and of its cruelties. It came to him that seldom, if ever, did civilized man kill a fellow being without some pretext, however slight. It was true that Tarzan wished this man's weapons and ornaments, but was it necessary to take his life to obtain them? The longer he thought about it, the more repugnant became the thought of taking human life needlessly. And thus it happened that while he was trying to decide just what to do, they had come to a little clearing, at the far side of which lay a palisaded village of beehive huts. As the warrior emerged from the forest, Tarzan caught a fleeting glimpse of a tawny hide worming its way through matted jungle grasses. In his wake, it was Numa the Lion. He too was stalking the black man. With the instant that Tarzan realized the native's danger, his attitude towards his erstwhile prey altered completely. Now he was a fellow man, threatened by a common enemy. That, my friends, is from this book, The Return of Tarzan by Edgar Rice Burroughs. The Return of Tarzan, the second novel in the Tarzan series. I am rereading all of Edgar Rice Burroughs' books. It is my great Edgar Rice Burroughs reread. I read all of Edgar Rice Burroughs' books when I was a younger man, late teens, early 20s. And this one, I remember being my favorite Tarzan novel, the second novel in the series. At this point, Tarzan and Jane have broken up after being together for a very short time. So Tarzan is no longer in the jungle. He has returned to civilization, where he's gone to civilization. He's never been there before. He's gone there with his friend D'Arnaud, whom he had rescued in the jungle when he was just the ape-man. And Jane has managed to get herself engaged to Tarzan's cousin, who is the current Lord Greystoke. Now, Tarzan is the real Lord Greystoke, and he proved it through fingerprint analysis. But he's keeping this information to himself, because if he claims the title Lord Greystoke, then he's going to take it away from his cousin, who is engaged to Jane, and so he'll be taking away all of Jane's money and estates, because she is still going to marry Tarzan's cousin no matter what, because of, honor. How this whole state of events happened, you'll have to read the first book in the series to find out. This is a great sequel. The reason I like it so much, not only is it packed full of adventure, and it is, it has all the stuff you want from a Tarzan book. Lost cities, tons of adventure, lots of action, crazy monster men, apes, always gotta have apes. But the jungle stuff doesn't happen until halfway through the book. The first half of the book is Tarzan dealing with civilization, trying to learn to live in civilization. He's in Paris with his friend D'Arnaud. And he has a hard time of it. He comes across the rascally Russian villain Rokov, who's just about the most villainous villain you'll ever find. This guy should have a V carved into his forehead. He's so villainous. If he had a mustache, he'd twirl it. He's that kind of guy. So he runs afoul of Rokov, who manages to cause trouble throughout the entire book, no matter where Tarzan is. So Tarzan's in Paris to begin with. And he has some misadventures, causes some trouble. D'Arnaud eventually gets him a job as, of all things, a secret agent for the British government. You didn't know that Tarzan was a secret agent. Well, he was. For a very brief time, he was a secret agent, which took him to North Africa, where he had some adventures. And he became friends with some Arabs. He actually thought for a while that after he finished his little government mission that he would go and live with the Arabs that he had met, because he liked the kind of life that they led. But he didn't. He ended up in some more trouble, was tossed off a ship by the villainous Rokoff, and ended up back in his jungle where he grew up. All of that hinges on a stupendous amount of coincidence. This book has some strengths and weaknesses. Its main weakness is its reliance on coincidence. There is a point where he was tossed off a ship, and he doesn't freeze to death or anything. He just swims, and he manages to find a derelict that he clings to for a while, and then he sees the coast of Africa, and wouldn't you know it, it's the little landlocked harbor where he grew up and where his father had built a cabin. And so he's right back where he started from by sheer coincidence. Yeah, this book relies on that quite a bit. And I think it kind of knows it, but it does. But the adventure is just so extremely well done. The action is fantastic in this book. And there's so many interesting things going on that you can kind of let little things like that pass. When you read an Edgar Rice Burroughs book, man, you've got to let a lot of stuff pass. But it's kind of easy to do when you're reading it. Every once in a while, you'll come up to something that is just so ridiculous or preposterous, it kind of takes you out of it. But usually, Burroughs is very good at getting you past spots like that. So you just brush it aside and keep on going. So this was an interesting book because it actually has a lot of character development, part of which I read to you just now in that little scene. When Tarzan was a young ape-man Tarzan in the jungle, he would have thought nothing of killing a native and taking his stuff, because he was an animal. And that's what animals do. They just don't care about, stuff like that, But Tarzan had encountered human beings and has learned a bit about the ways of human beings. He's found how, the good things about people and the bad things about people. But one of the good things he's found is, getting along with other people and treating other people not as if they're enemies. Right. Tarzan used to just assume everybody was an enemy because that's how everybody treated him. But at this point, he's grown as a character, and he's like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Now, this guy he was stalking ends up being one of his very good friends. And he actually joins the little group of natives that he meets, and he becomes one of them. So that's an interesting turn. And when this is happening, he's thinking to himself, I almost killed this guy who is now treating me like his best friend. Everything I could ask for, he's giving me. He's giving me food, he's giving me, ornaments, he's giving me weapons, he's giving me everything he's got, this guy. And I almost killed him. And he felt guilty, which is not something that Tarzan felt very much in his life, if ever. So there's interesting stuff like that in here. And him, before that, just him learning to deal with the weirdness of civilization. And it's interesting to see all that stuff from his perspective. He's an interesting character, Tarzan. Extremely intelligent man. Which is one of the reasons he survived as long as he has. He knows several languages. He's very good at picking up languages. He speaks English with a French accent. You learn that in this book, because French is the accent, or French is the language that he learned first. So when you picture Tarzan in your mind speaking English, he always sounds French, which is not usually how you picture Tarzan. Now, for a long time, most people pictured Tarzan as Tarzan from those old movies. I don't think anyone actually watches those old movies anymore, so I guess nowadays it's not such a problem. But there was a time when there was a huge stereotype that Tarzan was this big dumb guy that lived in the jungle who could barely speak, because that's how he was presented on film. He is not like that at all. Very, very intelligent man Tarzan is. And at heart, he's a noble person. He's a good person at heart. He just has to learn to be more human and humane, which he does. And he learns a lot in the first couple Tarzan books, which is one of the interesting things about it. So yeah, The Return of Tarzan. Excellent book. Now you're going to find some old-timey things. There is racism in these books. Edgar Rice Burroughs was very much a product of his time. And he is racist, Edgar Rice Burroughs. But I get the feeling from reading his books that all the racism that he has in him was culturally put upon him. It's because of how he grew up, I believe. Because a lot of what he writes about are people working together despite their differences. People coming together despite how different they are. The first few Mars books are all about that. People from different cultures, they're different races, they're different species sometimes, different religions, and yet they will all cooperate and work together and become great friends. And we start seeing that in this book, in the Tarzan series, that starts happening, where people that he would have just judged because they were African natives, now he's figuring, no, these are people just like me. We couldn't go through a whole video without some knucklehead over here. Okay, you going to be quiet? You going to be quiet? And let me finish my Tarzan talk. I've got like a minute left. Okay, thank you. So, yeah. Tarzan. Now, as progressive as Edgar Rice Burroughs occasionally seems, for an old white guy who lived 100 years ago, there are stuff in this book that makes you remember, oh yeah, this is an old white guy that lived 100 years ago with all of that racist baggage that he's carrying around. The African natives in this book, the Waziri, are referred to over and over again as savages, for example. They're just savages. Oh yeah, they're savages. It's like he doesn't mean anything derogatory. He just calls them savages because of course they are, because they're African natives. There's nothing savage at all about the Waziri. Nothing. They are far more cultured than Tarzan, that is for sure. Tarzan's the only savage in this book. But that's how he refers to the Waziri, even though they're obviously not, and they're friends with Tarzan, and Tarzan joins the tribe and becomes one of them. That's still how they're referred. And there's stuff like that all the time in Edgar Rice Burroughs. You know, every time you think, hey, this guy was ahead of his time. Oh, maybe he wasn't. You know, you just run across that stuff all the time in this guy's books. But that's kind of what makes them important. You know, every old-timey book like this is a piece of history. And they record the thoughts and feelings of people who lived at this time, at the time where these books were written. And that's important stuff, you know? That makes a difference. That's why you shouldn't censor this stuff or try to change it. You should just take it as what it was, the good and the bad. A lot of good in these books. They're an awful lot of fun, tons of adventure, very entertaining. But it also gives you a window into what kind of world Edgar Rice Burroughs lived in. There you go. The Return of Tarzan. I highly recommend it. It's a great sequel. Still think it's one of the best Tarzan books. So there you go. The Return of Tarzan by Edgar Rice Burroughs. I will see you here next time here at Stately Vaughan Manor. You guys have a great day.